taking a step further on the business side, if your customers aren't confident sa ibinibigay mong produkto, software, o serbisyo, kasi malalaman lang nila na, they're not using these practices ethically or our data is not secure in some degree, hindi sila magtitiwala sa iyo. Lose-lose situation din talaga yun sa long run.
So welcome to Kaka Computer, where tech meets wit and wisdom. So for today's episode, we're gonna talk about ethics in IT, making the right choice. So siguro first is, ano ba yung mga most pressing concerns or ethical challenges na na-encounter nyo as IT professionals? Yeah, siguro start with Maki.
Ay. Alam mo itong yung ethical question is hanggang ngayon parang pa din siya, ang hirap pa rin niyang i-navigate and I think unfortunately one of the first things that come to mind is really working with certain entities, particularly government engagements, na somehow unfortunately parang systemic na yung practice of corruption and may certain expectations na ganon. And that's the first thing, and one of the really challenging sort of engagements na I found myself in. That I think everyone else within, not just in IT, any sort of industry who engages with certain entities nga na medyo may questionable ethical practices, parang ang hirap pumosisyon na maayos. So yeah, I'll hand it over to, I guess, why don't you go, John? What do you think?
Ayan. So, lalo na sa panahon ngayon na data is power, data is everything. So, dito ako nakakita ng ethical dilemma kung saan basta-basta na lang kinokollect yung data at hindi lahat ng kumpanya, entities, or whatever groups out there ay alam kung paano siya properly i-handle. So, ano nangyayari? Minsan, yung data out there in the open, ready to be attacked. Parang ganon. So, ang issue kasi is, in this day and age na yung mga companies are data-driven, decision-making ay base sa data, P&L ay base sa data, and whatever decision nga na ginagawa nila is nagiging major issue to kasi magmula pa lang sa widespread collection ng user data, may issue na. Hanggang doon sa pag na-store yung data, may issue na rin. And yun yung isa sa mga, like you might say, targets ng isang breach. As a matter of fact, 94% ng organizations said yung mga customer nila hindi daw bibili o mag-avail ng produkto nila kung hindi protected yung data. So, I hope na enough yung provision ng Data Privacy Act ng 2012 para mapangalagaan natin ito. But I think we can still do better when it comes to ethical conundrums natin sa data.
How about you, Rod? Anong take mo dito?
Yeah, I mean kasi sa IT industry talaga is data. I mean, lahat naman niya tumatakbo sa data. So it's more on how you will manage yung mga data, how will you store it. Are you gonna encrypt yung mga data? Ano ba yung data na kailangan mong i-show sa client side and so on. So kaya nagkakaroon ng mga tinatawag na SOC 2 compliances, diba? Yung mga compliances for security ng data just to make sure na yung mga how do you store the data, yung mga architecture ng mga systems and so on is pasado siya dun sa mga compliance related sa security. So, making the right choice, actually, it's really hard. I mean, pagka ang usapan na is pagdating na sa mga security data, I'm not really an expert about it. But I do have an idea ano yung mga possible na security concerns. Pero yung pagiging expert, how you will make it secured, dun yung parang hindi pa ako ganun ka sobrang expert about it. But I think at least on the dev side, since I'm a software engineer, we should always think kung ano yung mga nire-return natin sa clients. Kasi most of the time, mga developers are just, okay, create ka ng ganito, endpoint, and then show it to the clients, and that's it. But they don't really care about yung mga PII data na possible na mabigay nila sa client, or if there is some third-party integration na they can accidentally share those information. So, yun yung mga possible problem. And one last thing is the use of AI. Because, di ba, I mean, we don't know how developers use AI nowadays. Or sabihin natin, mga data engineer as well, if they use AI. So, we just need to always be mindful of what data are we sharing, especially sa AI, since in AI era days. So, yeah.
I think from my perspective, coming from like a software development industry, I think security is always parang the last.
The last.
Yun lagi
really?
Parang no matter how many conferences we have about DevSecOps, shifting left security.
Ayun na, shifting left. Why is it?
Ang dami
Was it
pa rin
last
organization na when we talk to parang doesn't know about BPT, doesn't know about SDLC, Secure Development Lifecycle. So sobrang it's a challenge talaga for us professional na kasi even though we as developer we care about security, how do you convince the business, 'di ba? Na and sometimes it's not enough na para hindi kayo mapasok or ma-data breach, 'di ba? Parang unlike compare mo sa parang feature, let's say a feature na they would see something merong visual, parang it's easy to justify and you could relate it sa customer experience. But for security kasi
it's a non-functional requirement.
It's a non-functional requirement. So most likely reputational damage it would cause, leak, or parang mababiolate mo yung regulatory requirements.
Data privacy.
So, and most company parang doesn't really try to comply So, I think yun yung pinaka nakikita kong challenge sa
ethics in general.
Industry. And then of course, I second the AI. Even if you're a company telling your employees na don't use AI, you can't force them. I'm pretty sure most of them are using AI behind the scene and not telling you. So, pag ganun, advice ko lang is, just create like an AI usage policy and parang don't go against the wave. Ride it.
Yeah,
and
I think
implement policies to secure it.
What you guys are saying, actually leads to the second point about yung frameworks or principles, so we can, help us really adopt ethical practices in decision making in the company. I think one of the first measures that any sort of organization can adopt, just to kind of really force yung compliance and ethical practices into how we do things within an organization. So, it's always interesting na yung response leads to the second point. And I guess yung shady thing about yung AI is that, everything's still kind of experimental, specifically for generative AI. Because as far as we know, AI has been around for decades now. Yung more on the predictive side of AI. Pero yung generative AI has been kind of, hyped up in the recent few years. And now they're putting guardrails around the usage of AI just to make sure na PII does not leak in and out. Pati yung mga tawag dito, yung mga system settings ba na hindi ma-expose.
Configurations or something.
White Cloak Technologies is a custom software development company. They build mobile and web applications. They work with leading brands in banking and real estate. Visit their website at www.whitecloak.com to know more.
Yeah, I think for that about yung how we can kind of make yung practice easier is really putting in processes, policies, guardrails in what we do. You want?
Yeah, and I think we have some standards in place as well when it comes to the cybersec space as well. So, for example, for healthcare industries, we have the HIPAA, yung mga Healthcare Portability Act that we have. So basically, what it summarizes is ang health data nyo ay kami lang ang makakita ng mga healthcare institutions. Meron din tayong tinatawag na GDPR in the EU. So, yun yung mga general data protection requirements na inintroduce ng European Union. Ayan, ina-adapt din yan ng mga companies in Europe. And we also have ISO 27001, Information Security Management System. So, in my experience, mostly mga data centers yan. Na-apply din nila yan. Meron diyang clauses na nababanggit paano tayo magiging secure when it comes to a physical perspective hanggang dun sa technical perspective. So, ayan, sa mga startups, magandang i-recommend natin na i-follow nila yung mga standards na to.
Yeah. How about ano bang tingin niyo yung niya? Parang yung negligence dito sa mga IT ethics. Ano yung mga nagiging long-term, nakikita niyo
mga consequence, no?
Consequence.
Oo. Ayun nga, sinabi na din ni Don kanina ni John kanina na yung iba may mga legal frameworks na. So, definitely, pag hindi mo siya sinunod, may legal repercussions.
Yeah.
But aside from yung say, repercussions from not abiding by certain rules and regulations or any sort of compliance, definitely there's a loss of reputation which can either drive your business down. Cut costs, and people won't subscribe to the company. So aside from yung legal implications, there is definitely monetary implications about not practicing ethics, and it has to be really top of mind. And I know sabi mo nga medyo challenging, di ba, yung shift left, parang we all say shift left, but we're not really shifting left. That's why if we can really come up with a process nga na magiging transparent si Dev, kasi alam mo naman si Dev parang medyo specific siya, feature lang yung gusto niya. Pero kung naka-bake in dun sa framework, sa tools niya, yung automatic na mag-enforce ng compliance, mas maganda. Kasi kung hindi, ayan, nabanggit ko nga, aside from monetary losses, you have legal repercussions. And ano ba?
And to take a step further, yung nabanggit niya kanina na merong reputational risk when it comes to ganitong ethics in IT. Kasi taking a step further on the business side, if your customers aren't confident sa ibinibigay mong produkto, software, o serbisyo, kasi malalaman lang nila na they're not using these practices ethically or our data is not secure in some degree, hindi sila magtitiwala sa iyo. Lose-lose situation din talaga yun sa long run.
Mag-i-start talaga siya sa company kasi like what I said, like what Maki said, 'di ba? Sa mga developers kasi, sa akin kasi perspective ko dev. So nandoon ako sa tech lead pa nagde-dev pa ako. So parang usually kasi mga nasa isip ng dev is just to build a product without any considering yung securities and stuff and so on. So I think one of the possible solutions that we can do is the company itself should have this policy enforced to all of his employees, or at least put it as a requirement when building the application. Kasi it's really easy to forget those security concerns, especially if you are a software engineer. Yeah. And yun nga. So like ang pinaka magandang solutions as well is yung mga compliances. So even though if you're not applying for those GDPR or HIPAA or SOC 2 compliance, it is better to have an idea how it works, right? I mean, at least you have a glimpse of, we don't want to share the PII data on the client side. So we have this idea or context that we can be aware when we are developing our applications. Kasi nga, yun nga, nabanggit na nila yung mga consequences na possibly if you have this security concern in your application, possibly ma-drag down yung company nyo and malus yung yung reputation nyo dun sa mga customer. Kasi for example, if they found out na nagkaroon ng news your application nyo, na-leak yung mga account number and so on. Sinasave nyo pala yung account number sa database nyo without any encryptions and so on, without any compliance ng related to finance. So wala na. I mean, wala nang magtitiwala doon sa company niyo.
Or worse, i-demanda yung company.
Demanda, yes. That's the worst thing.
Kasi yan nga, may mga companies na lalo na sa US, 'di ba?
Yes.
Siguro medyo unfortunately wala tayong strong sort of laws locally na you can't really parang sue yung company. Pero kunyari recently yung Apple natalo sila sa parang privacy.
Yes,
Diba? Parang there's parang billions of dollars to return
Billions.
to consumers. So yung consumers going back 5 years can make claims of a couple of $100 for for every sort of I guess for at most 5 Apple products they've acquired in the past several years. No? Yun, malaking loss yun. I mean, scale that, I guess, wala lang kung di ka naman malaking company tapos ang
Yes.
laki ng penalties talagang magsasara ka pagkatapos.
Right.
Yeah. So, I guess we're good.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess let me just let me close this na talagang in a nutshell, ethics is a big deal.
It's
And I guess maybe you're aware of it, maybe you're not. But it has to be considered. And I guess my advice then for anyone who's actually running the show in sort of in any organization, not just in IT, if you can really bake the whole compliance process in and make it automatic. Kaya sabihin mo yung mga security gaps within the code, pwede mo isama sa static code
Right.
analysis, diba, during
Yeah.
check-in.
Yeah, right.
It makes things easier. And automation really also is a big deal, goes a long way in trying to enforce compliance within an organization, or especially in IT.
That's right.